Good morning, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Inclusive Publishing in the Nature Reviews Journals, Championing Diversity and Equity in Publishing Practice, which is sponsored by Springer Nature. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. Now I'll just put a couple links in the chat for where you can register for upcoming webinars and watch previous webinar recordings. Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speakers or to share any comments. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. Also, there is closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom right corner of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program, and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version and where to access the slides. Both the slides and a couple of relevant resources are available on the registration page, so I'll just put the link to the registration page in the chat, which you'll also receive in the follow-up email. Okay, now I'd like to take a moment to introduce our speakers for today. We have Jill Addy, PhD, Head of Publishing Strategy, Nature Journals at Springer Nature. Mina Razak, PhD, Editorial Director of Nature Reviews. Graham Simpkins, PhD, Chief Editor of Nature Reviews Earth and Environment. And Daniel R. Dickstein, MD, Chief Resident of the Department of Radiation Oncology at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And with that, we are ready to get started. So I will hand it over to Jill.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction, Sabrina. And thank you to everyone for joining today. So over the next 30 to 40 minutes, we'll be discussing and showing examples from the Nature Reviews portfolio of journals, which show the importance that we put on including and representing diversity in science on the pages of our journals. So I'll start with a really brief overview of the portfolio and give you an outline. And then I'll hand over to Mina, who will discuss the variety of ways that the portfolio moves towards inclusivity in terms of article types and things like that. Then she will hand over to Graham. He will give some excellent examples from his journal, Nature Reviews Earth and Environment. And finally, we'll hand over to Daniel to give a fascinating insight into his experiences as an author, publishing multiple times with the Nature Reviews portfolio and highlighting an important but taboo subject. So let's go on to my first slide. So first up, an overview. So first, I want to just clarify that the Nature portfolio, the Nature family of journals are published by Springer Nature, of course, and the Nature Reviews journals are part of the Nature family. This shows all of the reviews within the Nature Reviews portfolio. So there are 24 in total, and there's 2 more coming in 2025. So they're going to launch in January. That's Nature Reviews Clean Technology and Nature Reviews Biodiversity. The portfolio spans the clinical, life sciences, physical sciences, and social sciences. And we've also got 2 primers journals, which are quite different from the others. They publish very visual accompaniments to their primer articles on different topics, which are really accessible and useful for researchers. The newer launches within the Nature Reviews have been in the physical sciences. So you can see some years next to some of the journals there, and that's because they launched in that year. So most recently, we've had Nature Reviews Bioengineering and Nature Reviews Electrical Engineering, which was earlier on this year. And as I mentioned, as well as the Nature Reviews portfolio, you'll probably already be familiar with our flagship journal, Nature, and some of the research journals that we publish as well. There are about 40 of them. They span the life, physical, applied health and social sciences as well. And I haven't shown them here on this slide because we're focusing on the Nature Reviews, but we are, as I mentioned, all part of the same family. Those journals publish original research and also some review content, which I'm just going to cover on the next slide. What is the difference? So what what is a review journal? A review article, first of all. Oh, sorry, the lights have gone out in my meeting room. You just have to bear with me. So what is a review article? So as it says on the slide, it's a synthesis or a summary or highlighting data from multiple primary research sources. So it pulls that together and provides a balanced overview of an entire field. So they're really unique and they're really good for teaching tools, for example, and they're widely used by students and faculty. They also play an increasingly important role in improving accessibility of that original research for multiple readers, and I'll cover that in a slide or two. So what I want to point out here is that reviews are different from original research. Reviews summarize that original research, and the Nature Reviews portfolio publish only review articles and also lots of other kind of interesting journalistic and editorial content. The Nature Research journals publish primary articles and a small number of reviews as well. There we go. The next slide, I'm just going to cover what do people use review articles for and why are they valued? So we did a survey last year asking researchers about their motivations to read review articles and what they used them for. And this was really, really important and useful because we found out that what we thought was true. So it saves them time in understanding broad and related research. So they're using it to summarize things quickly. It's a gateway into new areas outside of their expertise. And they're really important for non-specialists and students, so helping as teaching tools, as we mentioned. So most of the respondents here, so 84%, defined them as very or extremely useful. 79% define them as very or extremely useful, and that's review content there. Sorry to go so quickly through this. I think I'm going to try and get you to the more interesting parts of the slide from Mina, Graham, and Daniel. So I'm going to go and talk now about why the Nature Reviews journals are unique. So there are lots of places where you can find review content, but what makes a Nature Reviews portfolio the best place to find that content? I've just listed 4 reasons on this slide. There are many more. So the first one is, I think, one of the most important ones and one that really makes the portfolio stand out. It's the extremely high level of editorial and production value that goes into each and every article. The editors that work at the Nature Reviews and at the other journals as well in our family are professional editors. So that is their main full-time job, to go over manuscripts. And they also have dedicated production editors, copy editors, and art editors, and all of which work on the article to enhance it and to make it as good as it can be. I'm going to show you an example on the next slide of some of the work that our art editors have done. So what they receive from the authors versus what we publish. And you can see a really nice example of that too. Second of all is our author satisfaction. So it's not this that makes our journals unique, it's the fact that our authors have such a valuable or so satisfied with the experience that they have working on these as well. So consistently, the results from these author satisfaction surveys that we send out after the journal has published the article are extremely high. And there's a blog post, if you follow the link here, written by Mina, actually, that summarizes this really nicely. So I won't dwell on it too much here. Third reason is academic reach. So the reviews that we publish are highly cited. So 41% of the Nature Reviews articles published in 2022, that's just under half, of course, were in the top 1%. Sorry, there we are. Someone just walked into my meeting room and switched the light on for me. There's always something that happens in a webinar. They're in the top 1% of cited content on Web of Science. And that's really impressive for a portfolio that publishes a relatively small amount of content. To have most of that content being in the top cited bracket is impressive as well. And all of them are in the top 25% or the first quartile of their impact factor JCR categories. And finally, I really want to mention this as well, is it's not all about citations. What about the societal reach and contribution to policy and real world, like applied? How does this work for our journals as well? Well, we see this quite a lot. So I did a quick survey recently, and I saw that just over 3,000 of the reviews from this portfolio were cited by policy documents between 2019 and 2023. 10% of those were to some of the new launches as well, which is quite interesting. So what are these policy documents? Well, they could be from a government level, advising what to do next, or some kind of new policy to bring in, or it could be an NGO, or it could be a think tank. But they're citing the research that we're publishing. And it means that this research and this review article makes it more accessible for multiple different people to read and not just researchers. This is the example that I wanted to show you that shows the high editorial and production values that we have. So on the bottom left, you'll see this is a diagram that an author had submitted to one of our journals. And on the bottom right, you'll see how the arts editor worked with the author and the editor at that journal to develop something that was really clear, really accessible for our readers as well. So I've just zipped through that really quickly. And I welcome any comments or questions at the end, very happy. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Mina.
Thanks, Jill. To see if this clicker works. Right, so inclusive publishing often means we'll publish most things or anything. And just to clarify, that isn't what I mean in this context. Instead, I mean, we're inclusive at Nature Reviews when we think about our approach to commissioning. We're inclusive when we think about our readers, and we're inclusive when we think about how to tell the stories that we do. And we can break this down into a few themes, some of which I've listed on the slide here. For example, when we consider authors we want to work with, we of course look at subject matter experts from around the world and ask them to contribute. But we also recognize that we're part of an ecosystem that needs to bring in more talent and report on ideas from outside of those, quote, traditional institutions. So for example, in terms of authorship, we have a lot of power to change authorship demographics because we invite most of the content that we publish. So while we have limitations in terms of the field itself, we can and we do push for at least representative gender balance. So journals such as Nature Reviews Psychology have authorship that's about 50-50 men to women in terms of corresponding author on reviews. But we also think about other demographics beyond gender. And in this, we care deeply about being part of the scientific endeavor, and we have a responsibility to our communities. And to that end, we've engaged in a comprehensive program to offer writing opportunities to early career researchers. This is important for many reasons. We're training the next generation of researchers on how to write impactful pieces. We're building relationships with authors and editors that should serve both for years. And we're increasing the diversity of the author pool. So I want to give you a few examples. Here on the screen, you can see a screenshot from Nature Reviews Molecular Cell Biology, where they published a series called Voices of the New Generation, which is a platform for junior group leaders to share some of their experiences. We have Nature Reviews Cancer, publishing Tools of the Trade. This originated in Nature Reviews Earth and Environment. So Graham will talk a little bit more about that. But this is an article type where authors can focus on techniques and methodology that they find useful in their work. And journal clubs, which is featured in several journals, most recently in Nature Reviews Genetics. And this is just a screenshot of my LinkedIn post announcing that. So in terms of topic areas, we've consciously used our platform to promote socially responsible calls to action and discussion within our pages. So for example, we've covered the impacts of racism in academia. We've discussed the considerations for care of sexual and gender minorities in different clinical specialties. We've highlighted the importance of mentorship to address the leaky pipeline, as well as other societal issues. These topics are, of course, rooted in the specific disciplines, but also have wide implications for research, for education, for environment, and for society. We also think carefully about the formats and the options we have available to authors and readers to engage with our content and to be represented in our pages. So for example, we recently launched an initiative to invite authors to have their names routinely displayed in their native, if not Roman alphabet, if they wish. So when I was a researcher, I would have loved to have seen my name in my mother tongue on my papers. So this, of course, has that feel-good factor, but it also shows the world that this endeavor of producing these journals is a human one. And we care about forging relationships with authors and with referees and readers, and we want to demonstrate that. It also shows readers that our platforms are global, and we're not simply just in the business of publishing with white Western authors from elite institutions. Another example of putting inclusion into practice stems from the journal I launched, Nature Review's Disease Primers. Here, it was very important for us to ensure patients are represented in the papers and the resources, and that they have resources that they can use to educate themselves about their conditions. We invite all authors to include a small essay in each paper from a patient or a patient advocate to describe how their condition has affected their lives and how they want research efforts to be directed. Now, this is obviously a drop in the ocean in terms of it's just one voice in each paper, but that can be powerful, particularly in rare diseases where researchers increasingly rely on patient-reported outcomes and patient advocates to advance their work. We also publish, as Jill alluded to earlier, infographic-type lay summaries to accompany the technical articles for the benefit of patients so they can get a quick understanding of the topic. In Nature Review Psychology, for example, we've published a whole series of articles supporting the next generation of psychologists, and the content highlights ideas, recommendations, and personal stories that are aiming to improve education, support trainees, and demystify non-academic career pathways. And to that end, this Q&A format with psychologists who have non-traditional careers has been really well received. This is perhaps, on the topic of editorial training, this is perhaps the most important part of my role as editorial director. We have a team of about 100 editors and art editors working to produce these journals. So ensuring each of those editors is aware of our standards and has the tools that they need to excel at their jobs and deliver our goals to be inclusive requires a lot of effort. We started with developing a massive suite of best working practice documents for the editorial job. And building upon that, we developed a guide around DEI. And this is a resource that editors can look over to find out about our inclusive style guide and our language guides, finding out who our volunteer sensitivity readers are, just in case they need a second opinion on the manuscripts that they're working on, and how to respond to invitations to speaking panels if, for example, they're concerned that an event will be a manel or will not be particularly representative of the community. Across Nature Portfolio and Springer Nature, we have resources to support editors. So this isn't a specific Nature Reviews thing, but really speaks to the character of the organization. So we have an inclusive language guide. We have a sensitivity style guide to support editors in books, journals, and in our newsrooms. And our editor-in-chief, Magdalena Skipper, also leads by example. We regularly get our editorial team together to discuss DEI issues in publishing and further improve our staff's understandings of the issues that they should be aware of. And finally, we're really, really good at sharing our experiences day to day. So the whole team has an awareness of things that have resonated with readers and things that could be learning experiences. So now I'll pass on to Graham to talk a little bit more about that content in detail.
Thank you, Mina. So yeah, as Mina said, I am Graham and I'm the chief editor of Nature Reviews Earth and Environment. So just as a bit of context, the journal launched in 2020 and we cover all aspects of geoscience and environmental science, from climate change adaptation through to volcanology. So following on from Mina's slides, I just wanted to give a few examples from my journal that we have implemented. And I just want to say, I think it's really important that we do this for my community in particular, given that geoscience is actually one of the least diverse disciplines in STEM. So as an example, only 10% of full professor positions in the US in geoscience are currently held by women. So anything that we can do will obviously be beneficial. So as Mina alluded to, one of the key things we consider to be inclusive is authorship. And as we commission the vast majority of our content, we have the capacity to be able to drive change, either through selecting the corresponding authors to lead the articles, or by providing feedback or recommendations on their selected co-authors. So two kind of things we focus on are author geography and gender. So in terms of the geography, we want our articles to represent the collective voice of the community. And to ensure that happens, we avoid having any articles from single author institutes. Also, many of our articles, given the nature of the topics we cover, have a regional focus discussing, let's say, climate change impacts in country X. And with those articles, I think it's really important that we consider local voices. So to ensure that happens, we either would commission a local author to be the corresponding author, or we would, at a bare minimum, ensure that they have co-authors from that region who would be able to offer subject expertise for that particular area. So I've included a few examples here. So in this top one about African rainfall variability, this was a proposal that came from authors in the UK, and it didn't have any authors from Africa. So I pushed back, and they thankfully agreed, and they ended up including authors from Egypt, Kenya, and Sudan, which was really important for this article. And in the second example about tropical peatland biogeochemistry, the authors were really great and had co-authors from Indonesia, Singapore, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Malaysia. And these are regions where these tropical peatlands are. So I was really happy that they could include and represent those voices. As a final example, we have an upcoming review on West African climate change. So here I commissioned an author from Rwanda to lead the article, and he then brought on co-authors from various countries, including Nigeria, Senegal, the Ivory Coast, and others, to ensure that the local voices are represented. In addition to geography, we also consider the gender of our authors. And at a bare minimum, we refuse to have any articles that are led entirely by men. So that's something we do as a minimum. And one area that we've really tried to enhance this is in geology, which, as I noted earlier, is very heavily dominated by males. So I've just included one example here, which I think is fantastic because it's actually an all-female led review article in the geology space, which is a complete and utter rarity, so much so that one of the peer reviewers actually commented on it in their reports. And I included a snippet of information from that peer review that really highlights how important and rare this is. So in addition to gender and geography, we also consider career level with our commissioning. And of course, we want our reviews to be the go-to reference in a particular topic. And we spend considerable time thinking about who would be the best person to lead that article, ensuring they have appropriate expertise and they are leading authorities in the field. So traditionally, that would mean that we would commission from well-established researchers, so PIs or long-standing professors. But early career researchers, so ECRs, also have a lot of in-depth knowledge, and they're actually often come at things from a different angle, so can offer a unique perspective. So at NREE, we've really therefore tried to champion early career researchers by directly commissioning articles from them, or if we have any proposals from ECRs, if they meet our editorial criteria, we'd be very happy to proceed. So I include just a few examples of the articles we've published from ECRs in the journal, but of the 200 reviews or perspectives we've published since launch, about 10% have actually been by early career researchers, and some of these have been some of our top hitting articles as well, which is fantastic to see. We also took the same approach with a new series of articles we launched earlier this year called Climate Chronicles. And these essentially document the state of a climate variable in a particular year. So with these articles, I really wanted to ensure that many of them were led by early career researchers, and if that wasn't possible, for ECRs to be included as co-authors, so that going forward, they would be able to step up and lead the article in subsequent years. So I was really pleased to see that this actually happened, and I commissioned 9 articles for the Climate Chronicles, 4 of which were led by early career researchers, and these are the ones I've included on the slides. And then 3 others also had ECRs as co-authors. So my hope, as I said, is that they step up next year and lead the article. And this was really well received by the authors, and I included some feedback there in red at the bottom of the slide, highlighting how appreciative they were of the fact that we were championing early career researchers for these articles. Okay. But while it's great that we can champion early career researchers, I also recognize that not all ECRs have the same opportunities. Not all of them will be in a position to be able to lead a review article, given limited experience with publishing or with writing scientific articles. So at the journal, I really wanted to be able to provide more opportunities for ECRs to develop. And here I'm mainly thinking of early year master's students or PhD candidates. And I wanted to be able to develop them and get them onto the publication ladder. And we did this by launching a new article type called Tools of the Trade. So as Mina mentioned, these are short pieces, around 300 words, and they focus on a tool or a technique. And as students are often the ones in the lab or in the field doing this work, they're in a really great position to be able to write these articles and provide authority on that particular method. Plus, in geoscience, people get to go really cool places when they do field work, and I wanted to be able to include some nice pictures in the journal. So that's also a bonus. So far, we've published around 100 of these, with authors coming from more than 20 countries, including Malaysia, the Philippines, Costa Rica, Chile, Brazil, and Mexico. And again, I've included some feedback here in red, and that's all been resoundingly positive, with the early career researchers commenting on the benefits of building a publishing footprint, gaining insight into the publishing process, and developing their writing skills through engaging with us and our edits, and then being able to use those skills going forward with their further writing. But given the success of this initiative, I wanted to take it one step further and not only use them to help develop early career researchers, but also to provide visibility for underrepresented groups. So to achieve that, we forged a partnership with GeoLatinas. So GeoLatinas are a community group that empowers, promotes, inspires, and develops Latina Earth science researchers. So initially, this partnership was for Hispanic Heritage Month, but it then developed into a longer partnership. And from that, we've actually published 18 Tools of the Trade articles from their members. We also use these articles to improve reach, visibility, and accessibility by offering translations in their native language. And you can see that in this example on the right here, where the translation, I can't see properly, but I believe it's in Spanish. And again, this was really, really positive. Feedback from the authors and from the GeoLatina leadership was resoundingly positive. And I've included just some screenshots there to demonstrate that. And we're now looking to expand these partnerships with other underrepresented groups. So watch this space. Moving beyond developing early career researchers, I also wanted to use our pages to highlight and raise awareness around issues pertaining to DEI. After all, we editors are members of the community we serve, and so I think it's really important that we use our platform to drive change. So one example of that was in 2021, when I commissioned a series of worldviews for Pride. And the motivation for these was to highlight the issues and challenges faced by the LGBTQIA+ geoscience community. And I really wanted these pieces to be personal stories about their lived experiences. So I commissioned 4 pieces on the themes of allyship, coming out, visibility, and intersectionality. Now, these Pride pieces were really, really well received, both by the authors and the readers. And again, I've included some feedback here. What I thought was really great to see was that these had visibility beyond the geoscience community, and that people are adopting and listening and trying to drive change in their departments, which is really, really great. We've also used our platform to raise awareness of other issues, including disability and awareness and inclusion, and colonialism, and others. So while I've focused very quickly on some things from NREE, I very briefly just wanted to end with other things from the division. So one of those is we've introduced a peer reviewer training scheme for early career researchers. After all, writing is only one part of the publishing process, so we wanted to provide them opportunity to develop skills in peer review. So as part of this scheme, all peer reviewers are invited to bring on a co-reviewer, an ECR reviewer, furthering our investment in the early career researchers. So we provide access to a Nature Masterclass to offer them training, and they provide a joint report. And they both get credit for peer reviewing that manuscript. It's a bit of context, around 25% of papers sent to peer review at Nature Reviews include an early career researcher in this training scheme, which is fantastic. And 94% of them think the scheme is really positive, and I've included some feedback here. Further things we do, many journals have forged partnerships with early career researcher groups or are offering tools of the trade or journal clubs, as Mina mentioned. Something really interesting, I think, is Nature Reviews Bioengineering recently launched a competition for PhD students and postdocs called the Ultimate Bioengineering Challenge. And the idea here is that students, either individually or in a group, propose a device or a solution to provide solutions to key bioengineering problems, which include off-grid bio-based cooling, vaccines in edible plants, or self-sustained oxygen masks. These will be assessed by the editors and an independent panel, and then the winning articles will be published in the journal. Nature Reviews Bioengineering have also launched a citation diversity statement, which again is fantastic. So there's very clear evidence that women, people of color, and people from the global south tend to be less cited compared to men, white people, and people from the global north. So the journal developed some guidelines and guidance to provide to authors on how to generate unbiased reference lists and to encourage them to consciously include historically excluded groups. And very quickly, I just wanted to highlight a bunch of other inclusivity or DEI content published in the journal across the Nature Reviews portfolio in collections, including some Pride content, which will follow nicely into Daniel's talk about his experience as an author. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Daniel Dickstein. I am an author and a researcher, and I'm going to be talking about breaking the silence in the medical literature, destigmatizing taboo topics, and really my experience working with Nature Reviews. So before I really get into it, I wanted to ask all of you, what do you believe are some taboo topics in medicine and science? And you can just enter them into the Q&A, and I will circle back to the Q&A in a few slides to just read them out. So I have no financial disclosures. And I'm the author or the researcher, and you heard from publishers, and many of you are librarians, and we really work together in this research ecosystem. And I just wanted to touch on this ecosystem. And as a researcher, I'm engaged with the library, and the librarians and the library provides content, academic assistance. As a researcher, I provide original content creation for the publisher, and the publisher can provide editorial support, visibility, and impact. And the relationship between the publisher and librarian, I have up here, but I'm definitely not an expert on that. But basically, you also work together. And so we're all work together to really produce and maintain this biomedical research ecosystem. And so I did mention that I have no financial disclosures, but I do have one disclosure, which is that I have a long-standing history with libraries and librarians. So I was really that kid, and I guess I still am, who really used the library for my research projects. So in high school, I did a research project on Irving Berlin. In college, I did a thesis on the environmental fate of chemicals, and I looked at cation pi bonds. And in medical school, I also went to the Icahn School of Medicine, where I'm doing residency right now, but I did research on older adults with head and neck cancer. And I used the library and the library resources for all of these projects. And before I sort of move on to discuss what I found sort of as the new sort of research endeavor, I just wanted to read out some of these taboo topics. So we have faith and religion, LGBTQ health, we have failed experiments, money, capitalism. So really there's a lot of various taboo topics. And so in residency, I sort of discovered another taboo topic. And so I started residency, and in residency, I started on the genitourinary service. And we see a lot of prostate cancer patients. And for everyone out there, prostate cancer is quite common. And in the US alone, there are approximately 300,000 new cases of prostate cancer each year. And something that's unique to prostate cancer is many of those patients, approximately 70% of them, present with earlier stage disease, and they have a treatment choice. And they can choose between surgery or radical prostatectomy, or 2 different types of radiation, which include external beams, so those big beams, or brachytherapy, which are those seeds or needles that are inserted into the prostate to kill the cancer. And so with the treatment choice, all of these treatments have treatment-related side effects. And the treatment-related side effects really differ. And so it's up to the patient and the physician to discuss which treatments-related side effects, or the ones to avoid, or the ones, or which treatment aligns best with the patient's overall goals of care and overall, like what they sort of foresee as their quality of life. So treatment choice, we discuss sexual health, we discuss bowel dysfunction. And so with regards to sexual health, up to 95% of prostate cancer survivors complain of some degree of sexual dysfunction after the prostate cancer treatment. And 50% of those patients say that that impact has a moderate to big impact on their quality of life. And so as physicians and caretakers, we actually hand out this form called the Sexual Health Inventory for Men, the SHIM. And it's on all visits, patients fill it out. And so as a new resident, I was passing this out to all the different patients. I was just doing what I was told. And then one day, a patient asked me, well, how do prostate cancer treatments impact receptive anal intercourse? And I didn't know. And it sort of struck me as it was like, uh-oh, I didn't necessarily even think about this. And I sort of wish I did. And it really resonated with me actually as a gay man myself. And I asked my superiors and I asked colleagues, and none of them knew. Everyone was very receptive, lack of a better word, to the question, but they just didn't know how to answer it. And I would also like to highlight that in this form, it says sexual health inventory for men, which is quite exclusionary considering that trans feminine individuals can also have prostate cancer. And it also says sexual health, but it only talks about erectile dysfunction, really sort of illustrating that sexual dysfunction's been synonymous with erectile dysfunction, which is really exclusionary for a whole group of people or sexual and gender minorities. And so briefly, this is the definition of a sexual and gender minority. And just a sexual minority is in the context of prostate cancer, is a gay and bisexual man. A gender minority is a transgender woman or trans feminine individual. And so I wanted to answer, and not to mention, the new annual prostate cancer cases in the US is 300,000 cases each year. Sexual and gender minorities represent approximately 9% of the population. And if you combine those numbers, that's approximately 27,000 new cases of prostate cancer in sexual and gender minorities, of which 70% are going to face a treatment choice, and they need to discuss the sexual side effects of these treatments. And just in comparison, the new annual brain and spine cancer cases, so meningiomas, glioblastomas, every different brain cancer and spine cancer, those new cases are 25,000 new cases each year. And new esophagus cases each year, 22,000 each year in the US. So 27,000 is quite substantial. And yet I didn't have an answer. Nobody had an answer. And so what was I going to do? And I did sort of look into this question a little bit more. And I wanted to look at sexual pleasure and cancer survivorship, which is also quite taboo. Think about sexual pleasure and cancer survivorship, as well as sexual and gender minorities with prostate cancer. Both of these actually had literature on the topic, and it wasn't much, but that existed. But what about problematic receptive anal intercourse? When I looked at that, when I Googled it, when I looked in PubMed, what was there? And there was really nothing. And just for everyone out there, in MESH and PubMed, so the MESH term, so for coitus, it actually says the sexual union of a male and a female, a term used for humans only. So this is how PubMed defines coitus, which is quite exclusionary. So there was really silence in the literature on problematic receptive anal intercourse. And well, what about pleasurable receptive anal intercourse? Maybe I could understand it from that, understand how prostate cancer treatments impact receptive anal intercourse if I understand just basics. And there was silence. And so why is this? Is it because it's a rare thing? Or is it because it's common, but it's stigmatized and taboo? And so we know that it's quite common, and It's really that it's taboo. And so no one really discussed it. And so I wanted to really understand, how do these prostate cancer treatments impact receptive anal intercourse? And I also wanted to know about just to address this for my patients. And so I went to the library, I sought this out, but there really was just nothing out there. I didn't really know how to approach it. I talked to different people and I aired my frustration. I really tried to identify a solution. I'm going to eventually talk about how sort of the role of the publisher comes in. But before that, I really want to say that like months truly passed. And even though I did constantly talk about this in the resident room and I asked, and I was a little frustrated that there was no answer, there was just, I had to move on. I went to the head and neck cancer service. I went to the next service. Life sort of goes on and I tried my best. But eventually a special issue came out, or a call for a special issue. And I'll be honest, I actually didn't see this. A co-resident of mine saw this and he treats brain cancers now. He has nothing to do with this, but he called me. He's like, oh my God, Dickstein, you have to see this. I was like, see what? And so this was a call on Twitter from Nature Reviews Urology, which called for papers specifically on issues related to pride. But I really want to highlight that within this tweet or within this call for papers, it highlights early career researchers and young urologists. And as an early career researcher, I was really excited about this possibility. And I was like, do you know what? I guess, even though it said Nature Reviews Urology, and I was sort of intimidated by Nature, and it seemed very inviting. So I identified a mentor within radiation oncology, and she does sexual dysfunction in females after cancer treatments. And this is a little different because obviously it's prostate cancer, but I wanted a mentor to see how to approach this. And I wrote a letter with her and I emailed Nature Reviews Urology. I spent quite some time emailing a proposal. And within less than a day, I got this response back. It was so encouraging. It was so nice. It was so enthusiastic. And from that, I wrote a commentary, and the commentary on this topic allowed me to sort of see what was sort of out there, what currently existed. I was able to make a framework. I was also able to get my name out there. So people sort of emailed me, people reached out to me. I was able to start creating a mentorship team and even just a team in general. And from that, I was able to then write a narrative review. And I think a narrative review is quite important to sort of stress that unlike a systematic review where you really do need literature, a narrative review, you also do need literature, obviously, and I'm really preaching to the choir here, but you're able to synthesize the literature and use lots of available information, but you synthesize it and you create a narrative. And that's what was so important about Nature Reviews Urology, Nature Reviews in general, is their narrative reviews. And so I was able to submit a full narrative review. And after it went through the peer review process, then I had some developmental editing with the editor. And here you can see the actual developmental editing that I received to overall improve my writing and my scientific communication skills. And I would say the biggest thing is there was also figure development. So from this review, the editor suggested I create a figure. And before I go on, I do want to say that I am here trying to destigmatize a taboo topic, but with that being said, I don't want to force anyone to see what's coming up. So I'm about to be showing some images of anal intercourse. So if you'd like to walk away or do whatever, you can do that. So this is the art, this is what I submitted. So I did draw a figure of anal intercourse. This is what I made to illustrate the anatomy involved in pleasure. And this is the figure that after a few back and forths with Nature and Nature Reviews Urology, the editor, the art editor, this is the final figure. And the final review was published. But I'd like to sort of note that there was impactful promotion. So the article was published, but then what? And this is the cover of the issue, which actually uses two of the figures from my article. And this is the tweet that Nature Reviews Urology tweeted. So they tweeted, and it went viral. It went viral on the internet. And that allowed me, or opened up so many different opportunities. And these new opportunities included being interviewed by Euro Today, which is Euro Today. I was interviewed by the National LGBTQ Cancer Network. I was invited to present at NRG Oncology, which NRG Oncology is this huge group of surgeons and radiation oncologists and medical oncologists nationwide, which conduct clinical trials. So this is me presenting to the genitourinary group, which of like really world leaders on prostate cancer. And so I was presenting to them on this topic. I was invited to be on a guideline committee. So I'm working with a group to write guidelines on sexual and gender minorities with prostate cancer. And I'd also like to illustrate or highlight that in order to write these guidelines, there needed to actually be literature already present in order to give more literature. And right now I'm actually working with an amazing librarian at Mount Sinai, Lily Martin, who has been incredibly instrumental in sort of helping with the guidelines and the systematic review element of this. But in order to conduct that, there needed to be some literature already existing. I also just published another review on receptive anal intercourse and diseases of the colon, rectum, and anus with Nature Reviews Gastroenterology, so a whole nother group of people. And I also won a grant called a Young Investigator Award through Conquer Cancer to really research and quantify the impact of radiation on receptive anal intercourse. And writing this review allowed me to really set up that grant to understand the literature and to write my proposal. And last but not least, I'm actually on a podcast called Science First, which is about to come out, no pun intended, later this week on the role of the prostate as a sexual organ. And that's a Spotify podcast. And really through sort of the symbiosis, so I the publisher, Nature, but also librarians. Through this symbiosis, we really are breaking the silence on receptive anal intercourse, this taboo topic, and really pleasure and cancer survivorship and pleasure even from sex. And I then want to highlight that then through that, from after breaking the silence and sort of continuing to talk about this and to produce more literature in the biomedical literature world to allow people to read and to understand this topic, the ecosystem then becomes a biome. And a biome is really it's a group of ecosystems, so different ecosystems. So as I already discussed, I have already began to research receptive anal intercourse, sexual and gender minorities with anal and rectal cancers, but also through mentorship. And so someone who I mentored, she wrote a commentary on erectile tissues and the similarity between the histology and the anatomy of female and male erectile tissues, and the need to degender the International Classification of Diseases to really move sexual pleasure forward for women. And so this was actually published in Nature Reviews Urology. This is a commentary. And in addition to mentorship, also collaboration. So I'm working with a group on sexual dysfunction in lesbians and bisexual women. And we're doing a review and doing, I'm able to sort of provide insight into what, in terms of how to sort of go about something when there's minimal literature on the topic. And also just inspiration in general. By me sort of talking about this topic, which is quite taboo, others are able to sort of now they're able to discuss their topic. And I have co-residents and other people in radiation oncology who are interested in actually the environmental impact of cancer treatments, which is actually quite a taboo topic. And they have come up to me to ask sort of like, how do you go about this? But really just illustrating that there are various topics that are even outside of the realm of sexual pleasure and sexual health that are also taboo and stigmatized, that this is a route to go about in order to sort of get that out there. And so the ecosystem becomes a biome. And really through that biome, we can begin to destigmatize taboo topics. And so really in conclusion, I want to highlight that special issues drive innovation and amplify new investigator voices. that through this symbiotic ecosystem, we really can break the silence. So by working with publishers, with librarians, so it's really all of us together, we can really break the silence on these different taboo topics. And then really through guidance, collaboration, and visibility, we can begin to destigmatize these taboo topics. And I think it's really important that there is a place to be able to discuss this topic and to really break the silence, because without this opportunity, this wouldn't really be talked about. There wouldn't be a place for receptive anal intercourse to be discussed. And breaking the silence really never ends. I continue to talk about it. I talk about it really nonstop, receptive anal intercourse, to normalize it. Just talking about it allows it to become more normal. Even if you say the wrong thing, it's better to say something than nothing at all. And so this is the latest review that I published with Nature Reviews, Gastroenterology and Hepatology. And this is the link to the review if you'd like to read that and see that. And I really want to acknowledge just so many people, because working with Nature Reviews has really been the highlight of my time as a resident and my career. And so I really want to thank Dr. Fenner, who is the editor-in-chief of Nature Reviews Urology, she posted that initial post, the call for papers. Thank you so much for taking a chance and guiding me and mentoring me and all the opportunities you created. And I also really want to thank Dr. Ray, who I just worked with. She is phenomenal. The two of them, I have so much to say. And Dr. Ray, even just working with her, it's so great working with two different editors, because they each really teach you something different. And Dr. Ray really taught me the importance of being succinct and discussing something succinctly. So even receptive anal intercourse is maybe somewhat stigmatized in my own head, or even though it shouldn't be, and as a gay man, it really shouldn't be, but just the society we grow up in. And so when I discuss my research, I used to sort of say that I'm conducting a different type of research on receptive anal intercourse, adding a qualifying term. And I shouldn't qualify, I just conduct research on receptive anal intercourse. And I'm really proud of it. And I really thank both of them for making me proud of that and this research, and for giving this a space. I also really want to thank our editors who made these images possible, Patrick Morgan, Laura Marshall. I want to thank the other editors that I worked with at Nature Reviews Urology and Nature Reviews Gastroenterology and Hepatology. And yeah, just in general, writing these reviews have taught me so much about scientific communication. It really launched my career, and I'm so grateful. I also want to thank the librarians at the Icahn School of Medicine at Levy Library. Lily Barton, thank you so much for your help with doing systematic reviews and teaching about systematic reviews. And Chris Alpe, thank you so much for helping with this presentation. And last but not least, I really want to thank Mina for inviting me here, Dr. Razik for inviting me here, and Dr. Simpkins as well for your help with the presentation. And yeah, with that, questions?
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel, and everyone for your presentation. We have a little over 5 minutes left for questions. So if you haven't put a question into the Q&A yet, feel free to do so. And I think we'll just jump right in. We have a question that came in from Dan, who asks, are you supporting credits, contributor roles, taxonomy, and or merit, or EMRIT? And I think this came in, or Mina, if you want to.
Yeah, I can jump in. No, we're not. Nature Reviews journals aren't officially in the credit program, but most of our content has some form of author contribution declaration.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then we have a question here from Heather, who asks, does Nature Reviews provide any tools or programs that authors can use to determine the diversity of their cited references for the citation diversity statement?
I can take this one as well. So the citation diversity statement project, I guess, is still fairly new and in development. So Nature Reviews Bioengineering, as Graham mentioned, is the sort of first journal that's really pushing authors to consider this issue. It's also kind of reflective of the community itself. Bioengineers are very passionate about this topic. We're hoping later this year, we will roll out citation diversity statements across all of our journals, and alongside that, bring guidelines or sort of advice to authors on how to build a diverse library for their research. So thinking about how to do searches and which tools to use to make sure they're capturing in their own personal reading library a diverse set of sources. So we're hoping to make a little bit more progress on that, hopefully by the end of this year.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And we have a question from Emily, and I think this is for you, Daniel. Emily says, "Thank you so much for sharing your research journey. As a new librarian, hearing how helpful and encouraging my colleagues were in your process is so exciting. What aspects of the peer review feedback that you received from Nature was most helpful for you as an author?"
So I think that the most helpful thing is really for a narrative review, creating an outline and really structuring what you're going to say and creating a structure or framework, because as I mentioned, it's quite different from a systematic review. So making a good outline and organizing so there's logical flow throughout the entire review.
Okay, great. And we have a few minutes left, so time for a couple more. Let's see. Graham, you talked about an effort to include early career researchers in NREE. I was just wondering, how do you see libraries acting as an access point in informing students of these publishing opportunities, such as the, tools of the trade that you talked about?
Great question. I'm not sure, to be honest. I think it'd be great if they could promote this. So far, we've definitely been relying on word of mouth or using social media. Like Daniel said, with Ned's tweet about Pride, we've done many tweets for calling for tools of the trade articles. And we've also been using LinkedIn recently. But if you have suggestions on how libraries can help with that, then I'm definitely happy to hear.
Awesome, thank you. And let's see, maybe time for one more. So Jill, you talked about making accessible graphics, and Daniel, you talked about the importance of graphics as well. So maybe just talking about how nature journals work with authors to make these possible, Jill, and then maybe Daniel, you could follow up with, why or the importance of clear and informative images for research, especially with this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I could just start this and then I might hand over to Mina, because Mina and Graham will actually have more detail on this. So there's a team that are working on each review with the authors, and they work to develop and clarify and just make that any art or any figures that are included in it that can be redrawn and far more accessible. So it's a very collaborative process. I think there was a question that came in that we answered as well. There's no charge for that. That's part of writing a review with the Nature Reviews portfolio. I think I'll hand over to Mina. Are there any more details? I'm sure there are that I've missed out.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of worth talking about our approach to figures in Nature Reviews. So often the editors will, as Daniel showed, the editor is asking, like, should we do this as a figure? I think a figure would be very helpful here. And one of the approaches that I often sort of tell editors to take is to ask their authors, not only is there a figure needed for this paper, but is there a figure needed by this field? Like, is the field really calling out for a particular figure that really explains the concepts clearly, that's just missing? My goal ultimately is to have Nature Reviews figures in conferences around the world, right? Because I think that they have such impact, the way we think about figure design, the way we structure information, the way we use color to convey important details is super helpful. And I think readers and learners everywhere, value that. So I wonder if Daniel has something else to add.
I really love my figures. I use them everywhere. I was just at ASCO, which is the American Society for Clinical Oncology. That photo was right there on my poster. People were looking at it maybe 10 feet away, but lots of people were gathered staring at it to illustrate the taboo topic and sort of like Yes, but in terms of working with the art editors, I'm so proud and happy of the final figure, and it is so collaborative. So I, maybe more than the average author, was maybe quite passionate about these anatomical figures, and there was like quite a bit of back and forth, but the art editors were so patient. The editors-in-chief really helped facilitate the conversation, and I am so happy with the final figure, but lots of iterations, and you saw my original, what I drew. And that took me hours and hours and hours. So I'm so grateful, and I can't wait to keep using these in all my presentations.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I think we're at 12, so we'll wrap up. And I'll just say thanks so much to Mina, Graham, Daniel, and Jill for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. A lot of comments in the Q&A saying thank you for the presentation, so thank you for that. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording, where to access the slides, and 2 links that Daniel provided. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the session and hope to see you again in the near future on another webinar.